The fine morning is interrupted by three men dressed in Santa costumes storming through the entrance. Nigel, the bank manager, steps up to greet them, but before anyone can process what's happening, they pull out their guns and fire into the ceiling. People hit the ground in panic, and a few don't get the chance as the robbers make sure of that. Simon, the orchestrator of the plan, drags Nigel to the vault's door and orders him to open it, but Nigel stalls with calculated hesitation, hoping to buy time. Simon quickly loses patience and makes it clear he's not tolerating any of that crap. When Nigel outright refuses to unlock the door, Simon grows increasingly aggravated and delivers a few punches that would change anyone's mind. But then, he makes a final decision, citing that his safety has now been compromised. Simon pulls the trigger and ends it with one shot.
Guns on the ground!
But a day before, Nathan, who lives by a few unspoken rules and keeps to a consistent routine, starts his morning the same way he always does. Breakfast for Nathan never really changes, with a simple smoothie made from fruits and vegetables, and the drive to work becomes his personal time to speak encouragement over himself. Once he arrives, he wastes no time getting out of his vehicle and, as usual, is the first to sign in, a title no one else has managed to claim from him. The day begins with a pep talk from Nigel, the bank manager, who gathers the team to lay out the morning's tone, and beside him stands Nathan, the assistant manager, nodding along in steady agreement with every point made. But the rhythm of Nathan's morning is disrupted the instant Sherry walks in. Not entirely new to the staff, but new enough to still carry some mystery, and the way she flicks her hair, the subtle movements of her eyes and hands, all seem to draw Nathan into a quiet daze that pulls him away from reality. Nathan is known to be a kind man, at least Earl certainly thinks so, especially after Nathan bends company policy slightly to give him a little more time to pay off a debt. Later, in the workers' lounge, Nathan pours steaming hot coffee into a glass already filled with ice, a habit he's grown used to. But when Sherry suddenly appears behind him, the surprise makes his hand twitch, and the hot coffee spills straight onto his other hand. Still, Nathan doesn't react with pain or frustration. Instead, he's far more preoccupied with making sure Sherry feels at ease, even in the midst of the awkward moment. Noticing the skin redden, she figures he must be in some discomfort and anxiously unbuttons his cuff to check how bad it is. But as she takes a quick look, she catches sight of older, rougher scars trailing up his hand that are enough to make Nathan gently pull his arm and nicely ask her to back off. The watch on his scorched wrist is beeping, and he turns off the alarm before excusing himself. Back in his office, Nathan is quietly taking care of the burn himself when there's a knock at the door. It's Sherry, checking in to make sure he isn't upset, but he's more focused on avoiding another uncomfortable moment, quickly slipping the burn cream out of sight while reassuring her that she doesn't need to feel responsible and certainly not obligated to him in any way. Then something clicks. Nathan happens to glance at Earl's file sitting next to his late wife's, and without making a big thing of it, he heads out and catches Sherry just before she turns the corner, finally taking her up on that lunch offer. At the diner, Sherry orders a pie while Nathan sticks with just a milkshake, but the pie turns out to be too good to keep to herself, so she slides the plate a little closer and offers him a bite, as it only seems fair. Nathan, no longer able to dance around the topic, blurts out that he's not exactly what you'd call normal. Instead of reacting with shock, Sherry just looks more curious, so he goes on to explain that he has a rare genetic condition, which means he can't feel pain. It sounds like a neat trick at first, until you realize it means missing life-threatening injuries and getting treated like something fragile, because statistically, he wasn't supposed to live this long in the first place. Sherry understands his condition, and while she respects it, she doesn't think it's a reason to miss out on a good piece of pie. She leans in with a kind of confidence that makes it clear she's not taking no for an answer, holding the morsel on her fork like she's trying to close a deal. In her opinion, he's not going to bite his tongue off the moment it hits his mouth, and even if he does, she's right there, in case it turns into a situation. Nathan hesitates, but eventually gives in, taking the bite as carefully as someone handling live wires. He starts chewing slowly, and before he can overthink it, the flavor hits him. It's sweet, warm, and ridiculously good, and it honestly feels like he's chewing through something that should have required a treasure map. Sherry casually asks about his schedule and whether he's free to hang out that night. Nathan heads home after that, where he settles into his usual routine of video games and banter with Roscoe, though tonight there's a dilemma in the mix. His friend is all for it, telling him to take the chance because it's just a harmless outing with the girl he's clearly been daydreaming about, and according to him, there's no way anything could possibly go wrong, but if only he knew just how wrong it could. Nervous, but trying not to overthink it, Nathan shows up at the venue for the art show and spends the first few minutes quietly taking in the pieces on display. He's focused enough to forget his nerves until Sherry appears beside him and playfully pulls him out of his thoughts. It turns out the entire exhibition is hers, and every piece is inspired by people she's met through the therapy group she attends. Nathan genuinely admires her work, and he's not the least bit surprised when someone walks by and tags one of the pieces as sold. At the bar counter, Sherry opens up about her past. She was a foster kid who eventually got adopted, though not into the most picture-perfect family. Once she turned 18, she left home and now has minimal contact with her adoptive parents and older brother. Then someone from Nathan's middle school spots him, and they've clearly grown physically but not much in maturity. Right there in public, Nathan gets mocked for making it this far in life, something his old classmates never expected given his strange condition. Sherry feels for him, but she can't help thinking the nickname she just heard might actually suit a superhero. When Nathan steps out for a quick bathroom break, it doesn't take long for his old classmate to slide into his spot and try his luck with Sherry. By the time Nathan returns and sees them laughing, a little too loudly and tossing around inside jokes, it feels less like harmless chatter and more like a challenge to whatever connection he's been hoping to build with her. Sherry, however, has an idea, and it's a very specific one. If the guy wants to act up, then she might as well give him something to remember. She announces drinks on her, and the bartender lines up the glasses, and without a second thought, they all take a big gulp. Nathan may not be able to taste much, but even he knows he hasn't just swallowed tequila. The target starts coughing and turning red almost immediately, and that in itself reveals it's pepper sauce. Sherry delivering a moral compass to the guy who thought mocking Nathan's condition would be funny. Nathan is over the moon, throwing high fives like it's a sport, and grinning so hard he barely remembers what he was upset about before they leave the coughing man behind. Nathan hadn't planned on taking Sherry home, but when she brings it up, he doesn't need much convincing. Nathan is home with Sherry, who's clearly impressed by his wall of books, ranging from deeply philosophical reads to titles that probably don't need to exist. It's the kind of collection only someone who genuinely loves stories would keep, and she takes her time soaking it in. Now, with fewer distractions, Sherry picks up where she left off and folds back Nathan's sleeve, revealing the tattoos underneath. One reveal leads to another, and soon she's taking in the full picture of a body covered in detailed ink, each mark tied to a story, though none of them seem fully finished. It's a quiet contrast to the calm, mild-mannered man she works with, and the discovery leaves her piecing together just how much she didn't know about him. The rest of the night unfolds in private, and for Nathan, it's a first in more ways than one. By morning, she's already gone, but she's left a handwritten note that keeps the corners of his mouth curled upwards as he starts the day. It's enough to throw his routine slightly off track as he ends up dancing a bit while making breakfast, and even gives chewing another try, though this time with extra caution. Nathan feels something different, and it's not just from the night, but from her. Later, he heads towards Sherry's desk, rehearsing what he might say to follow up on everything. And that's when the Santa Claus trio step into the bank to cause chaos. The moment Nigel's blood spills, shock ripples through both staff and customers, Sherry included. Now, it's the assistant manager's turn under the spotlight, as Simon drags Nathan to the vault's door. But Nathan, frozen by the sight of Nigel's lifeless body and Sherry's terror-stricken face, barely reacts even as Simon throws punches like he's trying to wake a vending machine. Sherry's soft spot for Nathan gets the best of her, and she blurts out a protest, her voice shaking as she pleads for him, which gives Simon exactly what he needs: an opening. He grabs her without a second thought and starts hitting her just enough to make Nathan crack. Nathan finally gives up the secret code to the vault, and Simon slams the back of the gun into his head right after, knocking him out. T's shaping up to be the kind of holiday season the robbers had only dreamt about, with bags full of cash and zero accountability. Outside, the police presence doesn't faze them much, so they shove Sherry in front of them like a shield and make their way out. The officers hold back as instructed, but the crew, clearly not on the same page, open fire anyway, taking down a few officers before splitting into separate getaway cars. Nathan comes to just in time to see taillights and Sherry disappearing with them, and his adrenaline kicks in like a silent alarm. He manages to help a wounded officer slow the bleeding, but proceeds to grab the officer's gun and car, because if there's going to be a manhunt, He's already volunteered as tribute. Sherry sits silently in the back seat, while Simon, behind the wheel, gives the order for their car to break away from the others. Nathan, unaware, ends up tailing Ben instead. A minor crash forces Ben into a cul-de-sac, giving Nathan just enough time to catch up. Ben takes one look at Nathan and figures out he has no clue how to handle a gun. Staying alert, Ben disarms him and runs into a restaurant kitchen. Both men now have access to whatever the kitchen holds, and it quickly becomes clear who's willing to use what. Nathan grabs a frying pan straight from the cooker and strikes Ben, knocking the gun into a pot of boiling oil. Ben instinctively grabs the pan, but the heat scorches his hand and leaves him with deep burns. Still, he pushes through the pain and lands a few hits on Nathan. Nathan doesn't flinch, absorbing the blows because he isn't here to fight. He just wants Sherry back. With no real fight training, Nathan picks up anything he can and throws it. This includes vegetables, fruits, and whatever keeps Ben back. Timing it right, Nathan ducks a punch, reaches straight into the pot, and pulls out the gun, ignoring the burns. Then, without fanfare, he delivers an uppercut, only this time it comes with a bullet that paints the ceiling. Ben's body drops and Nathan stares and calls out to it, as if Ben will somehow respond. Nathan hunches over and throws up, trying to steady himself with a string of weak reassurances that this is all for Sherry, and somehow that makes everything justifiable. The tears dry up fast when a lead surfaces. It's a ping on Ben's phone, and a tattoo on his body points Nathan in the right direction. He slams the accelerator in Ben's car, speeding off while arguing with Roscoe, his video game buddy turned reluctant research assistant. Roscoe pushes back, overwhelmed by the strange requests, but Nathan's desperation wins out. Back at the bank, detectives Mincy and his partner are getting the rundown. The story's a mess, and Mincy's colleague already has Nathan pegged as suspect number 1 even before the evidence tags are fully in place. Mincy still combs through every detail, not ready to make assumptions just yet. Elsewhere, Earl lets Nathan in, partly because he owes him. But when he sees the bullet in Nathan's arm, Earl backs up quick, calling for a doctor. Nathan doesn't wait and grabs a knife instead to dig the bullet out like he's just removing a splinter. Earl watches in silent horror. Soon, Nathan slumps, dazed and pale, then signals for the EpiPen. The shot hits, and almost instantly he feels better. After a stunned pause, Nathan thanks Earl, who's still reeling from what he just witnessed. Nathan hands over thick wads of cash to help pay off Earl's mortgage, which is an unexpected miracle arriving from the most unlikely of sources. But amidst the fleeting euphoria, Nathan warns Earl to launder the money carefully if he wants to avoid the authorities knocking at his door. Just as Nathan heads out, Roscoe comes through with an address with the next stop on Nathan's mission. Meanwhile, Mincy and her team arrive at the scene to find Ben's body. Briefed on Nathan as a simple man leading a quiet life, Mincy remains skeptical, suspecting Nathan might be part of the gang or out to cause trouble. His true motives are unknown, and that unsettles everyone. For Mincy's partner, Nathan is already prime custody material. Curiously, the team discovers Nathan's phone number is public, a strange anomaly for someone suspected of being involved in the robbery. Mincy decides to call, and to their surprise, Nathan answers. Mincy grills him about why he's gone down this path, hinting that he must be in possession of the stolen cash. But Nathan stays calm, firmly denying the accusation and explaining his reasons are all for Sherry. Every trouble, every risk, he says, is for Sherry, who is the woman who gave his life meaning and sparked something inside him. With Mincy listening closely, Nathan vows to do whatever it takes to get Sherry back, refusing to rely on the authorities. After all, the odds of kidnapped victims finding their way home through official channels are slim. So he'll keep going mission, save Sherry. Back at the safe house, Andre is pacing, worried sick that Ben hasn't shown up as planned, and Simon tries to lighten the mood, but Andre won't have it. His brother might be caught, or worse, and Andre's frustration nearly explodes on Simon. But Sherry's voice breaks the tension. With her head down and spirits low, Simon apologizes for hitting her back at the bank. But Sherry's pain runs deeper than bruises as she's holding back more than she lets on. Simon tries his usual half-hearted attempts at comfort, but Sherry just cusses him out. Finally, she lets loose on Simon that he promised a clean job with no casualties. Nigel's death hit her hard, but Simon shrugs off any blame and turns it on Sherry, saying if she'd gotten the vault code through Nathan, Nigel might still be alive. Simon's brutal with everyone, even his own sister. Nathan arrives at Zeno's tattoo shop, the address Roscoe sent. The door is slow to open as Zeno's associate sizes him up, and only after proving he's no pushover does Nathan get inside. Zeno greets him curtly and gets straight to work. Nathan shows him the picture of Ben's tattoo, and Zeno immediately recognizes it, muttering Ben's name. Nathan slips into character, claiming he served with Ben after Zeno unwittingly gives that information away. Zeno readies his tools as Nathan keeps pressing for more about Ben. When Nathan slyly tries to get Zeno to say Ben's surname, claiming it's just to nail the pronunciation, Zeno's instincts flare. He cuts him off sharply, telling Nathan to say it first, accusing him of acting weird since he walked in. Fed up with Nathan's games, Zeno's patience snaps, but Nathan still holds the upper hand, pulling a gun on him. Things quickly escalate into a fight after Zeno accidentally knocks out his own associate, as Zeno's big frame gives him power, but it also makes him slower. On the other hand, Nathan absorbs heavy hits, one sending him crashing into a mannequin before hitting the floor hard. Then comes Zeno's elbow drop, which is a serious threat. Nathan, quick on his feet, positions a broken bat with a jagged edge on the ground just right. Zeno lands on it with a grunt, ribs taking the damage. Still, the pain doesn't slow him down. He keeps pressing the attack, slamming Nathan into walls and mirrors. The shattered glass turns out to be Nathan's secret weapon. Fueled by anger, he punches the shards until they embed in his knuckles. Zeno watches, stunned and confused, as Nathan's fists become weapons themselves. Now on the offensive, Nathan's punches hit harder, and one sends glass debris into Zeno's left eye. Another flying punch leaves the big man injured and vulnerable. With the upper hand, Nathan presses for answers. Zeno, tough as nails, plays hard to get, so Nathan drops the act, apologizes sarcastically, then grabs the tattoo machine and scratches a jagged zigzag harshly across Zeno's skin. The pain breaks Zeno's resistance, and he finally spits out the name, Ben Clark. Nathan calls Roscoe to dig up details on Ben. The reply comes fast: work history, home address, everything, and Nathan nods with gratitude, barely acknowledging Zeno's groans. Without missing a beat, he grabs the tattoo machine and burns Ben's address into the skin of his own palm because he doesn't plan on forgetting. Meanwhile, Andre's nerves are frayed, and the silence around Ben is deafening, the longer it lasts. Nathan's name keeps circling his mind like a bad omen, and despite the safe house protocols, Andre's mind is made up that he's leaving. At Ben's house, Nathan arrives, unaware it's rigged like a fortress. His first step across a near-invisible tripwire sets off a swinging spiked ball that slams into his back, enough force to take out a grown man. But it's the nudge from the ball that draws his attention. Into the kitchen he goes, where the next trap waits. It's an arrow from a hidden crossbow that slices through his leg, in through one side, out the other. This time, he winces at the inconvenience and tries to yank it free, but it's no good. Then comes the final act. A rope around his ankle yanks him off his feet, hoisting him upside down from the ceiling like an unlucky thief in a medieval cartoon. Dangling there, blood dripping from his pierced leg, Nathan pulls out his phone with steady hands as it's to call Roscoe, the only person who can help. Before Roscoe can arrive, another Andre enters the scene, and he's greeted by the same swinging spiked ball, and the sight of Nathan hanging upside down. Nathan cracks a joke, spinning a fake tale about being a burglar who picked the wrong house. Andre isn't laughing, and as his eyes land on Nathan's palm and the tattooed address, he loses whatever restraint he has left. Then Simon calls with news that Ben was taken out by a wiry man in a suit. Sherry, quiet all day, turns her head sharply. That description hits too close to home, and she knows exactly who that man is. Andre stands face to leg with the infamous skinny guy in a suit, and it confirms everything he feared. He pulls his gun on Nathan, daring him to beg for mercy. Except Nathan flips the script, using reverse psychology to bait him. Tied to a chair, Nathan prepares to give Andre a make-believe show. He doesn't even realize in time that Andre is twisting the arrow to cause him pain, but upon realization, Nathan cues in the screams. Andre escalates by ripping off a few fingernails, but something's off, as Nathan seems to be acting, and Andre starts questioning the screams. That's when Nathan drops a fake confession to buy time. Ben gave him a message before dying, an apology for something long buried. It backfires, as Andre reveals they never met their father, and now knows Nathan's lying. He grabs a tool, ready to take Nathan's eye, but just then, Roscoe bursts in and clocks Andre with a bat, like a scene straight out of their favorite game. Nathan's free, but instead of thanking Roscoe, he sizes him up and smirks. This is the guy who claimed he looked like Jason Momoa when he's not even taller than Nathan. The reunion isn't ideal, but Nathan and Roscoe are finally face to face, and despite the blood traps and general nonsense, they're both pleased. Roscoe then urges Nathan to do whatever it takes to stay alive. No one else can tell this absurd story except him. Then Andre regains consciousness and goes full rage mode. It's 2 against 1, and Roscoe's actually holding his own until one of the house traps clocks him in the head and drops him. Nathan's flying solo now, with an arrow still lodged in his leg. He improvises and locks Andre's head between his thighs, then slams a fist into the arrow's tail. It shoots straight into Andre's skull and right into Nathan's other leg. The skinny guy in the suit has done it again, mostly to himself. Roscoe comes to and rushes to patch Nathan up just as Mincy and her partner arrive. Sirens blaring, but Nathan's not going down today. He swaps clothes with Roscoe, limps out as the decoy, and sends the cops chasing after Roscoe instead. Back at the safe house, Sherry's done, and Simon's baffled because they've done a dozen jobs together, but she's suddenly grown a conscience. Sherry snaps back that every job was supposed to be clean, but Simon always strays. Simon doesn't appreciate the critique, so he flicks the pistol off safety. And then Nathan steps in with his gun raised, confirming Sherry's suspicion that he's the one doing the damage. Nathan orders Simon to let Sherry go, and Simon pauses, realizing the obvious. Nathan's just a superhero-loving idiot in love, and it almost makes him laugh. Simon starts unpacking some truths about how Nathan's been played hard. Sherry won't say it's all fake though, as there are pockets of feelings, but Nathan's already unraveled as he thinks about the dates, the intimacy, and the connection. He's immediately broken and starts to cry, becoming ultimately numb. Simon walks up and drops him with a punch, then he switches to repeated kicking while Sherry sobs in the corner, hoping he'll stop, but he doesn't. Then, the grand finale. Simon lowers a suspended car onto Nathan's face. Slow, cruel, heavy, and Sherry screams in protest, so Simon points the gun at her too. He's about to pull the trigger, but that's when the cavalry storms in. Mincy and her team deliver one shot to Simon's stomach, and it's game over. Roscoe gives the police his full account of the chaos, and with that, they decide to go easy on the bruised and bandaged Nathan, who simply rolls his eyes while lying helplessly on a stretcher. But Simon, proving he's far from done, rises with what must be just a flesh wound and takes everyone by surprise as he shoots Mincy's partner in the neck and then pops another in Mincy in the stomach without hesitation. And when Sherry tries to flee, he fires at her too without a second thought. He doesn't stop there, as he shoots the officer driving the ambulance in the head and takes off in the vehicle without looking back. Sherry runs to the wounded Mincy, desperate to take her car and go after Simon, but Mincy insists on coming along, saying she wants to witness how this all ends with her own eyes. Simon, now behind the wheel, drives, like menacingly, unaware that his most persistent enemy is strapped inside, cuffed to a stretcher, and very much awake. Nathan soon realizes Simon is the one driving, so he starts struggling to break free, while Simon hears the noise from the back and grumbles about how Nathan has managed to show up yet again. He tries to turn around and shoot, but the gun slips from his hand as the vehicle swerves, giving Nathan a chance to grab it, though it turns out to be useless since it's not loaded. Thinking quickly, Nathan improvises. While Simon continues talking like he's giving a motivational speech, Nathan quietly powers up the defibrillator, places one pad on himself, and then extends his hand to Simon, sending a jolt of electricity through both their bodies that flips the ambulance on its side. Even with all that, Simon still has the upper hand and manages to wrap a rope around Nathan's neck, trying to choke him out, but Nathan fights back until they both end up trading punches in the middle of the wreck. Meanwhile, Sherry arrives at the harbor, but Mincy is too injured to continue, so she hands her gun to Sherry with one last plea. Be clinical, especially when it comes to the man who shot her partner. Simon is already pummeling Nathan, going as far as snapping his wrist so badly that the bone sticks out. And just as he's about to deliver the final blow, Sherry arrives and lands a shot in Simon's chest. Even that doesn't stop Simon entirely, as he somehow grabs hold of Sherry and starts beating her. But Nathan, now barely conscious, drags himself toward an EpiPen, stabs it into his leg, and feels a sudden surge of energy. He stands, limps over, and drives the jagged bone from his own wrist straight into Simon's throat, bringing the fight to an ugly and very final end. Just before he blacks out, Nathan mumbles his love for Sherry, then collapses for good. He wakes up many days later, completely encased in a full-body cast from neck to toe, with Roscoe sitting loyally by his side and informing him that he's lucky to be alive because, according to the doctors, it's nothing short of a miracle. Mincy enters the room with a glimmer of hope, offering a fair deal from the state judge. He'll get a reduced sentence in recognition of the fact that Nathan risked everything and saved an officer's life. A year later, Nathan is fully recovered and waves Roscoe off on a date so he can spend time with Sherry, who's serving a short sentence herself. And though their situation is far from normal, Nathan visits her regularly, and somehow, through all the madness, their love holds steady.